Now that we're generating a token and we're passing it to the client, we need to make sure that the client can pass back the token to the backend, to the REST API, and we then check for the A, existence, and B, validity of the token before we allow the request to continue. So for example, on our feed routes, on all these routes, none of these routes should be public. So if no token is attached to the incoming request, we should simply block access here. And this is what I'll work on now. For that, I'll add a new middleware. I'll create a new middleware folder for this. You could place it anywhere though. And I'll name it is_off.js. That is the name of my file. In there, I will import my JSON web token package because we'll need that package to validate incoming tokens. Then I'll export one function in that file, and that will be a normal middleware function with request, response, next, so that I can use it as a middleware. And now I first of all need to extract the token from an incoming request. Now currently we are not attaching the token to any requests. How could we attach it? If we go back to our front end, let's say in feed.js for loading posts, we want to attach the token. How could we do that? There are a couple of options. You could add a query parameter, something like token equals, and then enter your token value there, and then append other query parameters. That would be a valid option, nothing wrong with that. You could include it in the request body, but that is not ideal because, for example, GET requests have no body. So that is not a solution you should use unless you never have authenticated GET requests. A great solution is, however, that you use a header. It keeps your URLs beautiful. Of course, that might not be the most important argument, but still, it keeps your URLs beautiful. And a header makes a lot of sense for meta information like, well, the token, which it is in the end. So let's add a second argument in the load posts function in the feed.js file in the front end. A second argument there to the fetch method. And here I will add some headers to this request. Now I will not add the content type because I'm not sending any data here, but I will add the authorization header. Theoretically, you can add any header you want, but this is an official header, a header you officially use for passing authentication information to the backend. And please remember that on the backend, in the app.js file, where we added our course headers, I did enable the authorization header. You need to have that enabled for this to work. So now I'm setting my authorization header there, and I'm setting it to a value which is not just a token, but actually bearer, white space, and then this props token allows you to get the token in the React app. Why bearer? Well, this is just a convention to kind of identify that the type of token you have, and a bearer token is simply an authentication token. You typically use bearer for JSON web tokens. It's not a must. You could actually work without that, but it's a common convention, and therefore I want to keep that convention. So this is how I could add my token to that get posts request on the front end. Now on the back end, to extract it in my isOff middleware, I will create a new variable or a constant token, and then access my request, and with the get method, I can get some header value. The header is the authorization header, of course, and there I will get this bearer whitespace token. Now I'm only interested in the token, of course, so I will split on the whitespace, which comes after bearer, and I'll get the second value, which is the token then. So this is the token. Now I will try to decode that. So I will actually use a try catch block because it could fail. And I will create a new variable here, decoded token. And decoded token will then be JWT, and there you have a verify method. This will both decode and verify your token. You also have a decode token, but this will only decode it and not check if it's valid. So definitely use verify here. And then you pass in that token, which you extracted from the header, and then that secret, and that has to be the same secret you used for signing the token, of course. So the same secret you used in your auth controller, this one. Otherwise, you'll not get a matching result. So this is the secret which we will use for validating the token. Now this could fail. So here I'll have a catch block. And there I want to add a status code to my error of 500. And then I will throw the error here. Since I'm in a middleware, now the express.js error handler would take over. Otherwise, we know that decoding worked, and now I'll check if it is undefined, which would be the case if it didn't fail technically, but it was not able to verify the token. In this case, I'll create a new error, not authenticated, add a status code of 401, and throw this error. If we make it past this if check, we know that we have a valid token, however, and that we were able to decode it. So now I'll just extract some information from the token, the user ID, and I will store it in the request so that I can use it in other places where this request will go, like in my routes. And there I'll just access the decoded token, which now simply, well, is basically the part on the right here. We can now access that data since we decoded it. So there I can now access my user ID field, which I stored in the token. This will be useful for later authorizing access to, for example, deleting posts, because now I know the user ID stored in the token, and that should match the user ID of the post we try to delete later. And then I can forward this request. So we'll either have an error if we have no token attached, or everything will be fine. Now we can add that middleware to our routes, and I will add it to my get posts route. So here, get posts should use that middleware. Therefore, I first of all need to import it by requiring it from the middleware folder is auth, and I will add it like this here. Now I only can get posts if I do add a token. First of all, let me show you how this fails. If I remove this header, so this extra configuration on my get post request in the front end. If I remove that and I reload the page, I get failed to fetch posts, and in the console log I also see that here, because it fails to read split of undefined, we get a technical error because in my middleware it can't get anything from that header because the header is not defined. Therefore, we could add an extra check here and first of all get the header. Auth header would then be request get authorization. And if this is undefined, so if we can't find the header, then I will already create an error here. Not authenticated, because we don't even append the token, so we certainly are not authenticated. I can set my status code of 401, which is better than 500, and I can throw that error. And then down there, we know that we do have the auth header, so now we can split it. So that's an improved way of handling that. Now if we reload on the front end, we still get that error, but technically we now have a 401 error, which is better. Now I can add that code back where I add the token, but let's try adding some rubbish here, which is not a valid token. Now if that reloads, it still fails. And it fails because now the JSON web token package has a problem with the format of our token. So now let me revert this and add the valid token. And now as this reloads, now our posts load, because now we are validating this and we have a valid token indeed. So this is now how we can validate on the server side, how we can check whether the token is valid and then grant access. And now we just have to do that for all our routes before we then also make sure that only users who created something can delete it. Because right now, of course, well, I can delete everything, as you can see.